Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So recently I've been getting a lot of questions about the Disney College Program housing options. There's another college program starting up soon, so a lot of you guys are wondering how the housing works. And if you're not familiar with the college program housing, you have two options. You can either live on their housing. They have a couple different apartment complexes that you can choose from and live with roommates, or you can choose to have your own apartment and live off property. I personally chose to live out of house and get my own apartment for a bunch of different reasons, but I had a couple friends during the program that lived in housing and they told me all about their experience, and some of them liked it and some of them hated it. So I'm going to tell you guys what they liked and all about their horror stories. For those of you that don't know what Disney housing is, there's 4 different complexes that you can choose from. There's Chatham Square, The Commons, Patterson Court, and Vista Way. They all vary based on the amount that they cost per month and based on how many roommates you're gonna have. They each have a bunch of different amenities too. If you want more information about that, I'll link it down below, but I'm not gonna go into a ton of detail about that today. When you're signing up for housing, you get to request what complex you live in and with who you live with, but in the end, they choose for you. So if you do choose to live in the college program housing, they just take rent out of your paycheck each week, so you don't really have to worry about paying bills or paying rent or anything. They do that for you. Housing holds a ton of different events for the college programmers. They have special character meetings, they have like a college program prom and a bunch of different movie nights. The nice thing though is that if you choose to live out of house, you can still attend these housing events. So I didn't go to very many events during my program, but I had a lot of friends that did and they loved most of the events. I recommend if you are here for the program, you should do as many events as you can. I didn't because I knew I was going to be living here after the program, so I wasn't too worried about cramming everything in. Another thing about living in housing that people like is that you get to meet way more people. Out of house, I didn't have those connections and roommates and stuff like that. That's not really something that ever bothered me, just my personality type, but a lot of people did like being able to be so close to other college programmers. You're also really close to all of the events. You're in walking distance. They're all right there in the complexes, and you're also really close to all of the buses. You can just walk to the bus to get to work every day. You can only use the buses if you live in the housing. So if you choose to live out of house, you have to make sure that you have your own form of transportation or bring your car with you to Orlando. A couple things you need to know before choosing to live in housing is that they're very strict with all of the rules. It's pretty easy to get termed from the program based on things that can happen in housing. There are 21 and older rooms that you can live in, and those are the rooms that allow you to drink while on your program. But if you are under the age of 20 or live in any complex that has people under the age of 21, you will get termed immediately if they find out that you've been drinking. Disney housing has crazy rules about what you're allowed to have in your apartment. They consider a lot of things to be weapons, and yes, lightsabers are included in that. They also do random apartment checks to check and see if you have anything in your house that you shouldn't have, if you have any alcohol, or if your apartment is clean enough. And if it's not clean enough, you will get in trouble and you will only have a certain amount of time to make sure that it's clean, or you will get termed and sent home. Another thing that doesn't happen quite often but did happen during my program is one of the complexes broke out with bed bugs. A girl that I worked with actually was in one of the apartments that had this happen, and she came to work all upset. She stayed up all night. She luckily had her boyfriend that lived in Orlando, so she had to stay with him because they gave everybody about 48 hours that they had to be out of their apartment in order to clean everybody's rooms. One thing that people find in housing that can be a bonus is the buses. If you don't want to bring your car down here, you don't have to. You do have transportation to and from work, but the buses are also quite a nightmare. The buses will always be late, and they take about an hour to get you to your work location no matter where you work, because you have to stop everywhere in the parks and you have to pick up people from all of the housing complexes. So keep in mind that if you want to take the bus to work, you have to leave about 2 hours early just to make sure that you're there on time. Some people in Magic Kingdom have to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, so that could really be an issue for them. And a lot of the times you're gonna be waiting at your work location for a half an hour to an hour because the bus times will always vary and you don't want to be late. If for some reason the bus is late and you're late to work, it doesn't matter. You will get a point for it. They don't care because the buses are known to be late, so you have to take that into consideration and take an early enough bus to get there on time. Also, in housing, you can't have any overnight guests at all. It doesn't matter if they're your boyfriend, girlfriend, family members. They cannot stay in your apartment overnight, and there is a curfew. I'm not sure exactly what the curfew is. I think it's about 1 o'clock in the morning when everybody in your apartment has to be back in their own apartment and you have to be settled in your apartment. The only exception for that is if you get off work later than the curfew time. So a lot of those reasons scared me into not wanting to live in housing, but a lot of people had good experiences. I did have a few of my friends that I worked with have horror stories with their roommates. You're living with, like I said, about 1 to, I think up to 8 people can live in one apartment, and for my personality, that was not happening. I don't like to live with a large amount of people, and unfortunately, in most of the housing units here, you have to live in a room that has bunk beds. You can have up to 3 people living in the same room. One of the people that I worked with during my program had a roommate in their apartment that had major issues with everybody else that lived there and tried to get them all sent home, pretty much. She tried to plant, I think it was either alcohol or weed, one of her roommates' stuff, and then called security trying to get her sent home. Luckily, she was able to prove that it wasn't hers, and the girl that accused her got sent home, but unfortunately, that's not how it usually happens. It's pretty hard to prove if something is yours or not, so you have to be really careful who you choose to room with. There are Facebook pages for the program, so you can go on and see other people that are showing up the same day as you and try to get to know people before you decide to live with them. This is one of the main reasons that I chose to live out of housing. I didn't want to get my job and my house taken away for things that I'm not even responsible for. I knew I wanted to stay in Florida after my program, so I thought getting my own apartment would be the best way to go, and that way I don't get kicked out of my apartment as soon as the program ends. I also moved down here with my boyfriend, and so the only way for us to see each other would be if we had the same apartment, since you can't have any overnight guests. And we lived together before we moved down here, so not living together was not really an option for us. I also lived in a couple apartments before I moved down here, so living on my own really wasn't an issue, but I know a lot of people are just going into college and haven't moved out of their parents' house yet, so they want to live in housing, and that's kind of a transition. But if you're comfortable living on your own, I would personally recommend living in your own apartment. If you're worried about the price of living out of housing, there are Facebook groups and all kinds of postings online for people looking for roommates, and it makes rent way cheaper if you decide to room with other people. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment sharing rent with my boyfriend, and we were paying about $1,200 a month, so it is very expensive to live down here, but the more roommates you have, the cheaper it gets. Housing's also pretty expensive though. I think it ranges from between $400 and $600 as well. Also, if you live out of house, you are free to have your own pets, and I know a lot of people worry about leaving their pets behind when they come down to the program, so if you are somebody who doesn't want to leave your pets behind, or if you have nowhere to leave them when you come down here, getting your own apartment would probably be the best option. Almost every apartment complex here allows you to have pets, so that makes it really easy. But like I said earlier, you have to have your own transportation if you're coming here. The only other thing that was kind of annoying for living out of house is that you have to go to the housing complexes to pick up your complimentary tickets when you earn them. I didn't live very close to housing, so it was kind of annoying to have to do that. For regular cast members, they mail you your tickets, but unfortunately for college programmers, everybody has to pick them up in the housing complexes, so just be aware of that. They're not going to send them to you in the mail. Living out of housing though, it only took me about 20 minutes to get to my work location, and I lived pretty far. The people that live in housing that take the bus, it takes them, like I said, from an hour to 2 hours to get there, so you don't have to leave quite as early if you choose to drive yourself. Overall, I really enjoyed living out of house. For my personality, I just didn't want to live with that many people and share my room with anybody. It all depends on you and what you're able to do and what you want to get out of the program. If you want to meet a bunch of people and want to live in a room with a bunch of people, then probably live in housing. But for those of you that don't think the housing sounds that great, there are other options. Living in your own apartment while down here has been the best thing that I could have done, and it's been great. But that's pretty much all I'm gonna touch on today. Those are the reasons that I decided to live off, and then some of the main reasons people decide to live on. If you still have questions, go ahead and leave it down below. I'll be more than happy to answer those for you. I'm gonna leave a bunch of links down in the description box for you guys. That will be helpful, kind of gives you more information on housing and how much it costs up front. But other than that, I think that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Tune back next time.
Tune back next time. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so I know to do more college program videos.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you here. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.